What's going on, everyone? Welcome into the Chiefs Zone podcast. I am Farzin Vasugian. It is a Wednesday. We are halfway through the week and getting closer and closer to Sunday Night Football. Appreciate you all joining me on this Wednesday episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. It's already week 3. It is week 3 already. We are halfway through September already. That's how fast the season is going by. But hey, it is what it is sometimes. A lot to go over here on this episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. And for those of you that like lengthy podcasts, this one's going to be for you. We've got a lot to discuss today. Going to be talking about some big updates as far as the injury report goes for the Kansas City Chiefs. In fact, some significant news for the Kansas City Chiefs that a lot of you will like if you haven't heard already. Xavier Worthy and Jalen Royals practicing today. Jalen Royals practicing for the first time since the regular season's gotten underway. So great news on that front. Will they be available for this Sunday? We'll find out. The Chiefs' offensive line's been getting a lot of attention lately, specifically with the run blocking. And one of you guys said something on Monday's podcast that I did not have any information on, and I went and did some research regarding the amount of money spent on the offensive line compared to other teams. You're going to want to hear this. Also, there is a radio host in New York who is accusing the NFL of rigging this Sunday night's game. Yes, the Chiefs are 0-2. They're coming off a Super Bowl blowout loss from last year, and the Chiefs are still allegedly getting help from the NFL. Also, I have a good friend who I have not had a guest on this podcast for 18 years. Satish Shah will be joining me. If you've been a long time listener of the podcast, meaning season 1 of the podcast, you know who Satish is. But that's very few of you, because this podcast has come a very long ways. So if you don't know who Satish is, you'll get to know him. You're going to like him. And we're going to have a lot of fun talking to him later on in the podcast. We're on Facebook, YouTube, X, Instagram. Appreciate all of you guys tuning in live here on the Chiefs Zone podcast. A lot of things to go over. Michael says, you're the man. No, Michael, you're the man. You're the man. Appreciate all of you guys watching tonight. A lot of things to go over here today. If you guys enjoy this podcast, please give it a like, give it a share, continue commenting, and please, let's get some interaction going as the podcast goes on throughout the night before we have Satish Shah on to talk some Chiefs Giants. For those who don't know, Satish used to do a baseball podcast. Let me just say this about Satish, and we're going to dive into this a lot with him because I love talking about sports media. If you didn't notice from last week's guest with Jordy McDonald, Satish is one of the very first sports podcast hosts to ever exist. He's done with sports media and sports podcasting now, but he loves sports. He's still into it. He's on social media talking sports. In fact, he used to be a college instructor teaching kids about sports broadcasting. So he loves this stuff just as much as I do. And he used to work in sports talk radio in New York. He's done, he did a New York and a baseball in New York podcast covering the Yankees and the Mets. This guy knows everything about New York sports. So he is perfect to have on this podcast. And like I said, 18 years ago, he was a guest on this podcast. The very first season I did a podcast, I was 16 years old back then. That's how crazy it was. Like people didn't even know what podcasting was, but he was one of the very first sports podcasters to exist back when people didn't even know what podcasting was. So I'm excited to talk to him as we get through the podcast tonight. Before we go any further, I want to let you know this podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek. Whether you want to attend the game in East Rutherford, New Jersey, Sunday night between the Chiefs and the Giants, or you want to attend one of the games at Arrowhead, the next one at Arrowhead will be against the Ravens in week 4, or you want to attend some other NFL games, maybe college football, KU, K-State, Mizzou. Well, I'll tell you where you can go. You can go get your tickets at SeatGeek, and if you're a new SeatGeek customer, you can use my promo code FARZIN and save $20 off your first purchase from SeatGeek. Go to SeatGeek.com, pick your tickets at checkout. New customers can enter my promo code FARZIN and save $20 off their first order from SeatGeek. All right. Let's get into it. Let me start things off by asking you guys a question here. And please, like I said, comment below, get your questions in. We'll chat it up as we go throughout the night. But I do want to start off by asking you guys a question. And I'll keep an eye on Facebook, X, YouTube, Instagram. I'm gonna keep an eye on all of it. So please chime in. How are you guys feeling about the Chiefs? 0-2 is never ideal. The odds of winning a championship or in reaching the playoffs are very slim. Now we haven't had the 7-team playoff format for each conference. We haven't had that for too long. But in the amount of years we've had it, teams have, what is it, a 12% chance, I think I saw, of making the playoffs after an 0-2 start. So, listen, as sports fans, and listen, for a lot of things, you can say this for a lot of things, but as sports fans, we always have that instant overreaction, okay? Sometimes I'll say stuff in the post game, and my thoughts about this will be a little different later on, just kind of depending on things. Right now, the way I look at things, 0-2 is 0-2. It's not good, not ideal. Doesn't matter how tough the schedule is. Doesn't matter how many players you have absent. The reality is you had a tough schedule last year. The Chiefs always have a tough schedule. The Chiefs are always going to get every team's best shot. And last year, the Chiefs dealt with a shit ton of injuries, as we all know. And they still managed to win 15 regular season games, getting the 1 seed with a week to spare. At this moment right now, how do you guys feel about the 0-2 start right now? Still have faith in the Chiefs, Holly says. Christopher says, I think we absolutely demolished the Giants this week. See, as soon as you predict something like that, Christopher, that's when it goes haywire. That's Kansas City Chiefs football for you. Michael says, bad start, but bad circumstances will be just fine. Didn't the Chiefs start out slow a couple of years ago, too? Yeah, that was 2021. I feel like the O-line still isn't up to par. Charlie says, can't open up holes for the running backs, and Mahomes is still running for his life. Pretty bad when Mahomes is the leading rusher. Eric says, is there really much of a difference between being 0-1 in a 16-game regular season versus 0-2 in a 17-game regular season? I mean, listen, regardless if it's 16 or 17 games, if you're 0-2, it's a rough 2 weeks. Here's the thing about winning and losing in football. When you win, unless you play Thursday night, you have a whole week to kind of enjoy that win. Now, in football, the rule for the players is that you get 24 hours to enjoy the win or to just sulk it in, accept the defeat, and then erase it from your memory. But when you go to practice and all the things they address in practice, they remind you of the most recent game, especially if you're coming off a loss. When you lose in baseball, and I understand baseball is a completely different sport, but it doesn't change the fact that if you're the Kansas City Royals and you got destroyed by the Minnesota Twins 15-1, well, that's a really shitty loss. And if you're the starting pitcher, you're going to have to think about that for a few days. But if you're any of the other players on the diamond or in the outfield, you really don't have that 24-hour rule to take it in and just kind of enjoy or feel bad for yourself, however you want to take in a loss. You've got to get back into it the next day. Sometimes you get back into it the next morning when you're already at the stadium for batting practice and you've got a 12 p.m. or a 1 p.m. first pitch. So in football, it's different. When you start a season, let's back up a bit. I mean, they're coming off a really bad Super Bowl loss. And I know a lot of Chiefs haters love to mention, they're also winless in the preseason. So it's 6 losses in a row. Okay, all right, whatever. But just actual games that count. The preseason. I'm sorry, the playoffs, which Chiefs ended in the Super Bowl, got whipped in that one. And the first 2 weeks, starting off 0-2. This team hasn't won in quite some time. They haven't won it in a while. And the way that Super Bowl loss happened, it erases a lot of the things the Chiefs did, as fun as last season was, with all those games coming down to the wire and seeing all the reactions afterwards, it does kind of nullify a lot of the things that the Chiefs accomplished. So when I look at this football team right now, regardless whether it's 15 games or 16 games or 17 games, a slow start is a slow start. 0-2 is 0-2. You are sitting on these 2 losses for a couple of weeks now. And look, I know there's a lot of turmoil in New York right now. The media, and we're going to get Satesh's thoughts on this. I'm going to pick his brain, just kind of get an idea of how people feel about the Giants right now. But people in New York do not feel good about this football game, which is funny because people in Kansas City feel that this is going to be another one of those games that Kansas City unexpectedly will make it close by hurting themselves so much, and will give a team like the Giants plenty of chances to steal this game. So the way I look at it right now, if you're Kansas City, you're coming off these 2 losses that you've been sitting in the L section of the win-loss column for a couple of weeks now. It's not a fun place to be. I can't remember who said this many years ago. I want to say it was Aaron Rodgers, maybe Rex Grossman. For some reason, I'm like certain it's an NFC North quarterback that said this, but they had a very interesting comment. When you win, it feels like you're on top of the world. When you lose, it feels like the end of the world. All hell's broken loose. From a media perspective, from a fan perspective, whenever you're recapping a game, and you're only as good as your most recent game from a public standpoint, people will always talk about that most recent game more than anything else. No one cares what you did in week 1. People care what you did most recently. Now, if you're on a streak, it becomes an even bigger deal. And right now, the Chiefs are on a 2-game losing streak. Technically 3 if you include the Super Bowl. So that does kind of weigh in. K Famous says, I honestly don't know how to feel. Ted says, if they don't win Sunday, they need to change things again. Other than that, it's early. I know Kelsey's in his head. I just hope he gets out of it. Here's my thing. And I'll get to Kelsey's comments in a moment here. There were a lot of things that I was expecting to hear from Kelsey. Didn't hear about the Rashee Rice shirt, which I know is getting a lot of attention. We covered this on Monday, but it has gotten a lot of attention nationally. And I've already gone over it, so I'm not really going to get into that whole thing. If you guys want my thoughts on it, just check out Monday's podcast. But I will say this about the Chiefs right now, because I listened to Mark Schlereth, who, let's be honest, if you follow him on Twitter, he lets it be known that he is thrilled that the Chiefs are 0-2. But he was on Rich Eisen's show, and he made it very clear the Chiefs are not in trouble. The Chiefs are going to be fine. On First Things First with Nick Wright, Chris Broussard said the Chiefs will be fine. I think, and I'll talk to Satesh when he comes on the podcast, I'm going to get his take on the Chiefs and their 0-2 start. Because, listen, he's in New York. He doesn't have a dog in the fight. I want to know his perspective on the Chiefs and just kind of how they look at 0-2. But you know what's really weird? And I understand ESPN and their analytics department, they measure things very differently. But if you look at the sports books, and I know a lot of you love looking at the sports books and the odds on there, I do too. The Chiefs have the 3rd best odds to win the AFC right now. So yeah, they're 0-2. Yeah, 2 very good opponents without some key players. And 1 or 2 mishaps could have really turned things around, and we'd be talking about a 2-0 start. And we wouldn't be talking about, oh boy, has the game gone past Andy Reid? Is Andy Heck's job on the line? We wouldn't even be talking about that. But when you look at the sports books and DraftKings specifically, the Chiefs are number 3 for best odds to win the AFC. So whatever that is worth to you, whether it's betting lines or whether it's actual human beings that are in sports media for a living, a lot of people outside of Kansas City are not truly concerned. There are a lot of fans online. This is their Super Bowl right now on Kansas City, seeing them struggle the way they are. And a lot of fans online are saying this is over. The dynasty's over. I know Colin Cowherd, he's very certain that it's over. But a lot of people aren't. And I said this on Monday. Where have I heard this exact same narrative? Oh, that's right. 2014, when New England visited Arrowhead Stadium, the Guinness Book of World Records. They were in the building. And Kansas City beat the living hell out of the Patriots. I mean, that was a game that I had never seen Tom Brady in before. Nobody saw Tom Brady lose a game like that ever. 41-14. Jimmy Garoppolo goes in, throws a garbage time touchdown pass to Gronk, and Gronk refuses to do that iconic spike. He just did like one of these sidearm tosses to the refs, just towards the ref. I mean, that was a whiplash. And I remember listening to the sports talk media stations in Boston. They were done with Belichick. They were done with Brady. They thought the success had reached an end. They thought the dynasty, the best years were behind them, and that it was time to move on. And so did everybody else, by the way, for the record. But what happened? They won the Super Bowl that year. 2017, same thing. The Chiefs go into Foxborough on banner night. They're coming off the Super Bowl win where they beat the Falcons, 28, whatever, the 25-point comeback win. And Kareem Hunt fumbles on the very first snap of his NFL career. And the Patriots get off to a great start. And then what happens in the fourth quarter? Tyreek Hill lights it up. Kareem Hunt lights it up. The Chiefs score 21 unanswered points. And a lot of people, and the Patriots got off to another slow start that year too. And people then brought it up again. The question was, are the Patriots done? No, they went back and won the Super Bowl that same year. So I've seen this story before. And listen, Brady is the GOAT. And I know Mahomes right now is number 2 behind Brady. I would put him ahead of Montana right now. But Mahomes is getting a lot of the comparisons to Brady right now. Is he not? He has been for years, even still with this blowout loss. So if there's any quarterback or any team that's conditioned to come back from this 0-2 slow start, it's Patrick Mahomes. It's Andy Reid as the head coach. It's this Kansas City Chiefs team. They're expected to get Xavier Worthy back very soon. They're expected to get Jalen Royals for the first time. And when the Rashee Rice suspension was announced, I remember seeing this from Jordan Schultz of Fox Sports. He said one player to keep an eye on is Jalen Royals, as a guy who is going to fill in for Rashee Rice's duties until Rice comes back in week 7 against the Raiders. We haven't seen Royals yet. Is going to play his first game this week. It seems to be trending in that direction. So my whole point is, we've seen dynasties be written off before, specifically with the Patriots. And the Patriots said, no, don't put that final nail in the coffin yet. We got 3 more rings and a couple other one other Super Bowl appearance. And Brady, of course, went on. Let's not forget, didn't the Bucs start 0-2 in 2020? I know 2020 was that weird year with half capacity, no capacity, whatever. But Brady, at that age, people thought he was done. 0-2, new team. Must have been Belichick who was right all along. Nope. They overcame a lot of things, and the Bucs won the Super Bowl against Kansas City that year. So this Chiefs dynasty is far from over. Let me just remind you guys of something, and I know I brought this up many, many times. Think of all the Super Bowl comebacks that they've had. And all 3 Super Bowls that this unit has won, they trailed by 10 at some point in all of them. The Super Bowl 54 one, that did not look like it was a situation where the Chiefs could come back. Super Bowl 57, that one got pretty scary because not New England. Philly seemed to be running away with it. And the Chiefs said, nope, we're going to make adjustments. The Chiefs got off to a awfully slow start against the 49ers in Super Bowl 58, and they overcame that. But to me, the most impressive comeback in any Chiefs game we've seen so far was the Houston Texans game, the biggest come from behind win in Chiefs history, where they trailed 24-0 and they erased that entire 24-point deficit in the second quarter. This team did not get to where they are right now by just rolling over, quitting, feeling bad for themselves. Remember 2 years ago, the year where the Chiefs had all the drops? They lost to the Broncos. That was a pretty embarrassing loss because Denver was terrible that year. And that was Kansas City, specifically Patrick Mahomes' first loss to Denver. And that was a pretty big deal. And I'll never forget, the Chiefs were getting ready to play Miami. And just a few weeks prior, the Chiefs, to be clear, Chiefs were getting ready to play Miami in Germany. And just a couple of weeks before that, Denver just gave up 70 to Miami. So people did the whole, triangle math where team A beats team B beats team C. So surely team A is going to beat team C. Specifically, the Dolphins blew out the Broncos and they almost got the record for most points in a single NFL game. And so a lot of people were using those games, the Miami win over Denver, the blowout win over Denver, and the Denver win over KC as evidence that, the Chiefs for sure have no shot against Miami. Well, what do you know? The Chiefs got off to a 21-0 start, didn't score in the second half, but they found a way to win that football game in Germany when everyone thought for sure Miami had that game won. This Chiefs team, the week leading up to that game, when they were doing media in Germany, dude, they were all full of smiles, feeling pretty happy about themselves. That did not look like a team that was coming off a loss against Denver. This is not a team that comes off a loss that's got to pout and feel bad for themselves and they want the world to feel sorry for them. That's not how they operate. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. I think a lot of Chiefs haters want the Chiefs to feel that way. They want everyone to feel bad for them. The Chiefs will not feel bad for anyone. Everyone will take responsibility. Patrick Mahomes will take responsibility for an interception that Travis Kelce should have caught. And Travis Kelce, on his podcast today, he took blame for it, talked about how, just like how he took blame last week for the Xavier Worthy incident in Brazil. Everyone, we've seen this before. This is nothing new. I'm not breaking any news to you guys by telling you that players on this team have self-accountability. Do they need to maybe nudge each other sometimes and maybe let each other know on the field? Yeah, we've seen it. Well, we saw Kelce kind of lash out a couple of times this year. Chris Jones, same thing. And I know there are a lot of opinions about that. And I'll be honest, I've gone back and forth. I mentioned it's never good to see that kind of thing. But at the same time, what do you want to see? I think I'd rather see them be pissed off than feel complacent. Because if they just came out in the media and said, yeah, we're 0-2, it's early, no big deal. I don't know if people would like that mentality. But you see everyone's pissed off, and rightfully so, they should be pissed off. Why would you not be pissed off for the way you started when you are the team that you are? I mean, the Chiefs are labeled as that team now. They just had a documentary come out about them. You don't just get a documentary coming out about bad teams. How many bad teams do you see get a documentary recapping what happened? Hard Knocks will follow a team as it's happening. They don't know whether something good happened or not. The Chiefs will be fine. And I think it does start this Sunday with a win over the New York Giants. I said this Sunday night. Kansas City's going to beat the Giants. I think it's going to be close. DraftKings betting lines have shifted. It was 6.5 to start. It dropped to 5.5. Now it's back to 6. So take that for what it is for you. But I'm confident the Chiefs are going to win this football game. I think it's going to be closer than it should be. I'd be very curious to know what Sitesh thinks. Sitesh will be on the podcast shortly, so we'll pick his brain and get his thoughts on what he thinks will happen on Sunday Night Football. Yeah, a couple of people are making a big deal about them getting together at 1587 Prime, which, by the way, is open now. And I did post a video showing you guys some prices because a lot of you guys were asking about prices. And it's out there. It's out there for you guys to see. Here's the thing. Players have a lot of friends and family members over. I mean, they're not gonna just, when the game ends, they're not gonna go straight to the locker room and study film. I mean, the coaches are responsible for doing that, and they'll bring it to the players the next day on a Monday. So trust me when I say they'll practice when it's time. They'll do film study when it's time. Sunday night, whether you win or lose, a lot of these players, they have a lot of family that visits for the game. I think you guys saw Patrick and Travis had a couple of celebrity friends who were over trying out the steakhouse because they had a soft opening for the last week and a half, I should say. So they've got time. They'll figure it out. It is their night to go out, have a good time with their friends, family, whoever. So I think people just forget, like, they're human too. Just because, if you work at a bank from 9 to 5, does that mean you're going home thinking about your job and studying about your job the whole? No, you're going out probably as well, trying to enjoy life like anyone else would. So I think people forget about that sometimes. Robert says sometimes adversity brings the team together. There's a good test for the leadership on the team to calm things down and keep the locker room focused. Yeah, and I see the rest of your comment there talking about week to week. I'll say this, and I think especially with the Chiefs right now, you've got to take it one game at a time, but I'm looking at these next two games. The Giants, that's a very winnable game. Should be a very winnable game. The following week, you've got Baltimore. And, man, I'll be honest, I'm a little nervous about that one. If you're 1-3, losing to Baltimore, another top-tier competitive team, if you're Kansas City, the question then becomes, not only do you have a slow start and how do you overcome it, but how do you even compete with some of the top-tier teams in the league? I mean, sure, maybe you make it close like you did the first two games, but we saw it last year. The Chiefs had a lot of close games, but they won all those close games last year. You don't get bonus points for making things close, ever. You just don't. You never do. Enrique says, I'm available if you need a +1 to 1587 Prime. Yeah, I was pretty fortunate to get an invite to the soft opening, knowing one of the owners. So had a chance to check it out. I reviewed it before, so I'm not going to go over it on this podcast. But yes, the grand opening is tonight, folks. It is out there. And no, I'm not going to a steakhouse on a regular basis. A lot of interesting reactions to the prices to that place, by the way. Man, we got a lot of comments tonight. I appreciate you guys. Listen, I'm not reading out loud every single comment, but trust me when I say I'm skimming through reading all of you guys. So I appreciate you guys tonight. Bringing the heat. I like it. You guys are the best. All right. Let's talk about the Chiefs a little more. Let's talk about the injury update here, because this is very significant. And we've talked about the offense and the struggles and the inconsistencies and how can things improve here. Well, big news. Xavier Worthy and Jalen Royals both practiced today. Now, Xavier Worthy practiced twice last week. He was limited. Andy Reid had his press conference at 11:45 today, and he made it clear that the only two players who were not going to practice were Mike Danna and Christian Fulton, both defensive players. So the media then quickly asked, someone in the media asked, does that mean Worthy and Royals are practicing? And Andy Reid confirmed it. And the reason the reporter had to get that reassurance is because we have not seen Jalen Royals practice since the preseason ended. Jalen Royals has been on the shelf for almost a month now. So for Jalen Royals to be available is significant. For Xavier Worthy to continue practicing is a big deal. Because what have we talked about the last couple of weeks? The Chiefs are without three of their wide receivers. Rashee Rice, their best receiver, Xavier Worthy, their second best and fastest receiver on the team, and Jalen Royals, the rookie they drafted, who has some potential, some upside. And they've been unavailable for you. Well, now you have Worthy and Royals. Worthy's expected to play. From what I'm hearing Royals is expected to play this week as well. If you have Worthy and Royals back for you, and listen, if they play on Sunday night in New York or New Jersey, rather, if you want to be technically correct, it'll probably be at a limited capacity. Listen, if you've got one player coming back on a limited capacity, okay, I'll still take that. You got two players coming back on a limited capacity, okay, that'll help. I think Xavier Worthy's presence alone is going to make a really big difference for this offense. So I'm really eager to see how things go tomorrow and Friday. And obviously Friday afternoon, roughly around 1 o'clock, that's when we get the game day designations, whether or not they'll be out, questionable. We'll see what happens there. But I'm eager to see what happens the rest of the week. I was not expecting Royals to be available for practice. ESPN came out with an article this morning talking about how the Chiefs were frustrated with the unavailability, especially with the injuries at the wide receiver position. You had two last year with Rice and Worthy. Rice and Hollywood. This year it's Worthy and Royals, but they're both practicing today. So that was a huge deal to have those two guys back at practice. Now, I will say this, the injury report that came out, both players were listed as limited, which was confusing to me because Andy Reid was asked specifically about Worthy, if Worthy will be limited in practice today or if or just be held back in any capacity in practice. Andy Reid said no, and he also said neither one of them, indicating that both Royals and Worthy should be full participants. But on the injury report, they're listed as limited. Now, limited can mean a lot of things. It can mean that they practice 90% of what they were asked to do on a normal basis. Could mean 50%. I don't know. But they practice. And I think that is the most important piece of news for the Chiefs, specifically the offense and the wide receiver position moving forward as they're getting ready to play a Giants team whose defensive coordinator Giants fans want fired, like really, really badly. I'm seeing all kinds of memes, jokes online about Giants fans wanting to get their defensive coordinator fired. Let's talk about the Chiefs' offensive line for a moment here. This is interesting. One of you guys, and I apologize, I don't remember who it was. If you're in the chat, say what's up. Let me know. So that way I can give you credit. All of a sudden, everyone's going to take credit for this. I just know it. But somebody was asking, how much money are the Chiefs spending on the offensive line compared to other players? And I thought that's a good question. We definitely need to take a look at that. Well, I got the numbers for you. Get ready. I'm putting it up on the screen right now. Kansas City's number one, baby. Kansas City's number one in something this year. They are number one, and how much they pay their offensive line. And you see it on your screen, right? Okay, it's a little smaller. Let me zoom in a little more. I got glasses, and that was still kind of small for me. There you go. Kansas City is number one at paying offensive linemen. $71 million to Jawan Taylor, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, Jalen Moore, Josh Simmons, Kings. Okay, Josh and Kingsley, they're on a cheaper deal. They're on rookie deals, but oh boy, that ain't good. You're spending that much money on your offensive line, and you can't get a push up front? Oh boy. That's not good. The next biggest team, the next team on the list, the Broncos at $59.5 million, Minnesota at $58.8 million, Carolina at $58.6 million, Chicago at $54.3 million, Philly at $50.7 million, the Giants, interestingly enough, at $50.6 million, Rams, Titans, and Detroit rounding up the top 10. Rounding out the top 10, I should say. Oh boy. let's see. What are they making? Jawan Taylor's making 27 million. Trey Smith's making 14. Jalen Moore's making 11. Jalen Moore's making more money than Creed Humphrey. Creed Humphrey's making 10 million. And then, yeah, there's Simmons, there's Wanye, Kingsley's there as well, Norzed, Caliendo. There you go. Those are your 9 offensive linemen, and they all total $71 million. Holy shit. Mac Shen says we should have the best offensive line in the NFL. Yeah, you should. You're spending that much money, and you don't have the best offensive line in football. That needs to change. Boy, like, what do you even say about that? First of all, someone said the 74 is over. Yeah, Jawan Taylor's overpaid. 100% overpaid. That's why I think Jalen Moore has to be, like, he has to be standing right next to the offensive line coach. Because if Jawan Taylor continues his penalties and mishaps, dude, yank him out of the game. He's on a short leash, 100%. Boy, $71 million, and you're ahead of the Broncos by more than 12 million. Dude, Patrick Mahomes has to be sitting in the pocket like he's on the beach. $71 million. That's 25% of your cap. There are only 4 teams whose offensive line is taking up 20 or more percent of the cap. The Panthers at 22%, and I'm not going to read the exact percentage. I'm just going to read the whole numbers. The Panthers at 22%, Vikings at 22%, rounding up. The Broncos also at 22%, and the Chiefs at 25%. Damn, man. See, this is the beauty of football. You get guaranteed money, and it's all yours. It'd be great if sports was performance-based, like that's how you got paid. Kind of like, you know, someone that works in sales and they're on commission. That's how football players should operate. Dude, I guarantee you, if that is how sports worked, you would see a lot of athletes working their asses off to make sure that they were getting the best paycheck possible each week. What are my thoughts on Kingsley Suamataia? Not great. The dude was letting a blitzer just walk around him. And thankfully, Mahomes, I think he found Hollywood Brown on one of those passes. But it is not good. Why is it that the Ravens have a crapload of all-stars on the team and can get anyone still, and the Chiefs can't get no big name? Because the Chiefs, they're paying. Hold on, let's look at this. This is actually a good question. The Chiefs are giving the biggest contract at X position to Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey. Jalen Moore has to be the richest backup offensive lineman in the NFL right now. Who's the highest paid tight end in the NFL? Is it Travis Kelce? Yeah, it is Travis Kelce. So Travis Kelce's the highest paid tight end in 2025. Harrison Butker is the highest paid kicker in the NFL. And Chris Jones is the highest paid defensive tackle in the NFL. So that's, to answer your question, that's one reason. And they were able to get Derrick Henry for cheap. What was Derrick Henry's contract? It wasn't anything like, I remember when hearing about Derrick Henry's contract, I thought to myself, the Chiefs could have gotten in on that. Let's see. Derrick Henry signed a 2-year deal, $30 million. Okay, for some reason I recall it being less than that. Let me Google something real quickly. Derrick Henry contract, 2 years. Okay, yeah, it is 30 million. For some reason I thought it was less than that. But still, I mean, given what Derrick Henry's doing for the Ravens, that would have been well worth it to have in Kansas City. Yeah, the amount of money being spent certainly has not reflected their performance. If we're just being complete, listen, I don't mind Kelsey getting 19 million. This guy was heavily underpaid, and I've said this already. He was heavily underpaid for a very long time here in Kansas City. Now I suppose, yeah, he's marrying a billionaire very soon. So I mean, I don't know. Because people in the past always mention, oh, he's dating Taylor. Well, I don't recall her bank account belonging to him. I guess now it does, but not my business. Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs are paying a lot of money to their top tier players, trying to keep their top tier players happy, making them the highest paid players in the league, in league history, I should say. So that's one reason why. But yeah, offensive line spending, that's been up there for quite some time. Before I get into the game breakdown here, I do want to touch on this real quickly because the Chiefs, they're 0-2. And right before that, they got whooped in the Super Bowl. So the refs don't help the Chiefs anymore, right? There's no way. I mean, because I've been getting a lot of comments from Chiefs haters. People saying, oh, the refs are no longer on your side. The NFL got called out. And as soon as they got called out, the refs in the league decided to back off. Okay. Not according to this guy, Don LaGreca of ESPN New York. He says that the NFL is not going to allow the Chiefs to go 0-3. Now, he does add, in addition to the Giants being bad, the NFL is going to apparently step in and do something to help the Chiefs go 1-2 and not go 0-3. Dude, even when the Chiefs are losing, the league apparently rigs stuff for the Chiefs. You know what? I think the Chiefs, if they went 0-17, I guarantee you, one person out there, when I say one person, I'm talking someone in the media, they will accuse the NFL of rigging it so the Chiefs get the number one pick in the draft. I swear someone will have that narrative ready. Now, the Chiefs are not going to go winless. That's not happening. But good Lord, man, it's like, can we just even go through a loss, 2 losses, back-to-back weeks without any kind of referee accusations? Like, how do you come to this conclusion that the league is still rigging it for the Chiefs when they're losing right now? Dude, I don't get it, man. Some people just hear a narrative and they want to live and die with that narrative. That's funny. All right, enough of that. Let's get into Chiefs Giants Week 3 Sunday Night Football. We'll be waiting all day for Sunday night to see the 0-2 Chiefs visit the 0-2 Giants. Oh boy, what did the NFL love to flex out of this one? Actually, I think oddly enough, a lot of people will want to tune in because they want to see the chances of the Chiefs to go 0-3. Dude, there's going to be a firestorm in Kansas City if that happens. With that said, this game is going to be on NBC. Obviously, Mike Tirico, Chris Collinsworth will be your announcers for this game, as they usually do Sunday Night Football together. Referee Land Clark, I believe he did the Chiefs-Bills regular season game last year, so just to give you an idea there. The Chiefs, right now, they are favored by 6, currently minus 325 betting favorites, whereas the Giants are plus 260 underdogs, and the over-under for this is at 45.5 per DraftKings. The injury report, I mentioned to you already, Xavier Worthy and Jalen Royals, they both practiced today, and they were both listed as limited in practice. Patrick Mahomes also was added to the injury report with a right wrist injury, but was a full participant. Hollywood Brown, Ashton Gelati, Charles Omenihu, Juwan Taylor, Drew Tranquil, they're all on the injury report. They're all full participants. Josh Simmons did practice with an illness, so he's sick apparently. He was limited, which I don't think is a big deal considering it's an illness. If it was like an actual injury, like a knee, a shoulder, or something, I'd be a little concerned. But it appears that Josh Simmons will be just fine. Looking at the Giants side of things, they've got a lot of players on the injury report as well. Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, Chauncey Golston, and Darius Masua, all linebackers, all did not practice today. Gunnar Olszewski, one of their return specialists, Wan'Dale Robinson, who had a phenomenal game against the Cowboys. A couple of wide receivers there were limited in practice. Let's see. Other key injury report, Darius Slayton. another key player for that wide receiver room. He was also limited today. Cam Skattebo, their running back who they drafted, he is on the injury report with an ankle injury, but was a full participant. So those are some of the key players to go over from the Giants on their injury report there. Head coach Brian Daboll, former offensive coordinator of the Kansas City Chiefs. And that's not the only former Chief on this coaching staff. Mike Kafka, also on the Giants coaching staff. He's the offensive coordinator of the Chiefs. The offensive coordinator of the Giants. Was a former Andy Reid draft pick, playing quarterback in Philly in 2010, and then became a Chiefs assistant from 2017 to 2021. Built his way up pretty quickly, became a passing game coordinator and a quarterback coach. That was his last title with the Chiefs before he moved on. And if you remember at the time, that was when Eric Bieniemy, nobody really knew, is he going to get a head coaching job? Is he going to come back again? So Mike Kafka, he kind of wanted to be Andy Reid's offensive coordinator, but he did not know what his future was going to be like if he stayed at that position. So he got an offensive coordinator job elsewhere and is now with the New York Giants. In fact, I remember when Daniel Jones was in New York, I think Patrick Mahomes was FaceTiming the Giants quarterbacks to help them understand Mike Kafka a little more, because he was the quarterbacks coach before leaving the Chiefs. So you see that kind of thing sometimes where players will coach up other players to kind of get them to help better understand that assistant coach if they have familiarity with that coach. So cool to see. Russell Wilson is their quarterback, though, in his first year with the Giants. First week, very quiet, 17 of 37, 168 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. And a game where the Giants lost 21-6, could not get any offense going whatsoever. He was sacked twice in that game. Against the Cowboys, we saw the Russell Wilson of old in this one here. 30 of 41, 450 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, was sacked 3 times, but boy, he did everything possible to put the Giants in position to win this football game. And you look at Russell Wilson right now, the 450 yards he had in week 2, the most of any quarterback in week 2. As a matter of fact, Wilson leads the NFL in passing yards right now in the early part. Yeah, it's early, but still leading the league in passing yards. Also, he's not the only league leader from the Giants. His teammate Malik Neighbors had a phenomenal game. 9 catches for 167 yards, the most of any receiver in week 2, and a pair of touchdowns against the Cowboys. This dude's a freak. Man, I love Malik Neighbors. And I'd be very curious to see how the Chiefs do against Malik Neighbors this Sunday. He had 1,200 receiving yards as a rookie last year. Wan'Dale Robinson, and by the way, Neighbors is also a league leader. He's leading the NFL in receiving yards in the early parts of the NFL season this year. Wan'Dale Robinson, he had 8 catches for 142 yards, another standout game from a Giants wide receiver. He also had a touchdown as well. Cam Skattebo had a touchdown, ran 11 times for 45 yards. Rookie running backs seem to be getting off to a slow start. We've seen it with Travion Henderson. His name escapes my mind right now. If you guys can help me out, the running back from Ashton Genty from the Raiders, off to a bit of a slow start here. We've seen some slow starts from rookie running backs this season. And I remember Cam Skattebo, how impressed people were with him in the college football playoff game between Arizona State and Texas. And I remember really wanting him in Kansas City, but Skattebo got into the end zone despite not having the greatest set line. His first week, his NFL debut, he had 2 runs for -3 yards. Tyrone Tracy, who's also one of the team's kick returners, he's part of that unit as well. He ran 5 times for 15 yards. Not the greatest yard per carry average. You know what's crazy about the Chiefs and the Giants? They have one thing in common, other than being 0-2. Their quarterbacks lead the team in rushing. Patrick Mahomes, he's on pace for 1,000 receiving yards, but let's chill a bit, because we know Worthy, Royals, and Rice coming back. That's going to change all of that a lot. But Wilson leads the Giants in rushing yards with 67 through 2 weeks of football. That's insanity. I mean, at least Mahomes has a decent number to put up there. Better than 67. I'll tell you that right now. As far as the offensive line goes, boy, they've got a lot of weak links on that offensive line. This is an offensive line that I expect the Chiefs to do really well against. I'm looking at some of the pass blocking from, what is this, week 1? James Hudson, the left tackle, he allowed 6 pressures against the Commanders. Let's see, in week 2, Greg Van Roten, the right guard, allowed 3 pressures. Somebody allowed a couple of sacks earlier this year. Who is it? Okay. I thought someone did, but I must have missed that. But anyway, their left guard, John Runyon, he's allowed a sack already this year. And then against the Cowboys, James Hudson allowed a sack. Both the Cowboys and the Commanders, they went out there and got after the quarterback. And listen, for whatever it's worth to you, when it comes to the pass blocking grades from Pro Football Focus, dude, it is horrendous for the Giants. They do not have a good offensive line. It was okay against the Commanders. It got worse against the Cowboys, and they still found a way to put up 37 points, which is impressive, all things considered. But dude, I'm looking at their left tackle, James Hudson III. He's wearing number 55. I always like to give you guys numbers for key players. George Karlaftis has to take this guy to school. I'm expecting a monster game from Karlaftis, and I'll do it later on, but I'm going to go on DraftKings. I'm going to put a bet on George Karlaftis as part of my same game parlay to get multiple sacks here. I am confident George Karlaftis can get the best of James Hudson. Charles Omenihu, Ashton Gelati, whoever's opposite, whether they go up against Marcus Mabeau or the right tackle, Jermaine Uelmore, I think they can hold their own on that side of the offensive line. I'm excited to see how this Chiefs defensive line is going to look. We've been complaining the last couple of weeks about how this 4-man rush on that defensive line, they're not getting a push. They're not getting to Jalen Hurts. They're not getting to Justin Herbert. I think Russell Wilson, he's going to have his legs ready in this one, because I think the Chiefs, without any blitz packages, without sending a linebacker, without sending a defensive back, I think that 4-man front right there will take care of business. I really do. I'm confident in that Chiefs defensive line going into this game. All right, let's go over to the Giants defensive side here. Shane Bowen, their defensive coordinator, who is by far not anyone's favorite in New York. He is on the hot seat. He's been the defensive coordinator since 2024, was previously the Titans defensive coordinator. And as I said, Giants fans hate him. I have it on my notes here. I like their defensive line, though. Got a couple of guys to account for. Let's start with Brian Burns, probably one of the better edge defenders in football. He's gotten off to a good start this season. Former Carolina Panther, 3 sacks on the year, had 1 against Dallas. They've got their rookie Abdul Carter. He had half a sack against Dak Prescott. Also had a QB hit on Prescott. Kayvon Thibodeau, 1.5 sacks on the season. His 1 sole sack came against Prescott. Dexter Lawrence, this guy is just as good as Jalen Carter and Chris Jones. Maybe slightly 1 tier below, but Dexter Lawrence, pretty damn good defensive tackle. This dude's a beast. When you look at their the rest of their defense, their linebacker, Bobby, I'm probably going to butcher this, but Okereke, he leads the NFL with 26 tackles. He's the anchor on that defense right there for the Giants. When you look at their secondary, Drew Phillips got a pick against Dallas. That's the only interception, the only takeaway the Giants have had this season. They've got a really good cover corner in Cordell Flott, but outside of Cordell Flott, they are struggling in the secondary. They have Andre Phillips and Paulson Adebo, however you say it. They are not good cover corners. They are not. And their safety help, not very good either. Javon Holland, Tyler Nubin, they're not very good players. I would imagine that this is going to be a secondary that Patrick Mahomes is going to have fun picking apart. I would bet number 28, Cordell Flott. Keep an eye on that number, 28. And I guarantee you Mahomes is going to be throwing opposite of his direction. So that, be aware of this one. By the way, to go back to the Giants offensive line, I forgot to mention this. When it comes to Pro Football Focus rankings, their left tackle, James Hudson III, he is the second worst graded left tackle. Or second worst graded offensive tackle. So left and right tackles. So that's another reason why I'm expecting George Karlaftis to go off and have a monster game this week. He has to have a big game against Hudson. You look at the Giants special teams unit, which is coordinated by Michael Gobriel, coach special teams, and a little bit of defense since 2009. Former Jets special teams coordinator from 2021 to 2023. Their kicker, Graham Gano, has been perfect, has made all 5 field goals and all 4 PATs. All 4 of those PATs came this past week because, as we mentioned earlier, the Giants did not score any touchdowns against the Commanders. Jamie Gillen, their punter, and then their return game. I mentioned already, running back Tyrone Tracy Jr., the primary kick returner, and the punt returner, Gunnar Olszewski, I think is how you say it. He is the primary punt returner for the Giants. So that right there is the New York Giants in a nutshell. What am I thinking for this one? I'm thinking a Chiefs win. Would I bet on them to cover the spread? No. Now that I said that they will. Because a lot of times we've been expecting the Chiefs to blow teams out, and they always find a way to make it close. So if I had to bet on it, I'm betting on them to make this close. I think we'll see some good. I think we'll see progress from the Chiefs offense, especially if Worthy can play. And if he's not going to be on any kind of snap count, I think that can really bode well. But I'm not expecting Worthy to be a guy that's going to not be held back. I think he will be held back to some capacity. So I'm going Kansas City 23, New York 20. That is my score prediction for Chiefs Giants. I'd love to know your guys' predictions. Drop them below before we take a break and bring on Satish Shah on the podcast. And by the way, I'll give you a warning now. This is going to be a long interview with Satish. We're going to go over a lot of things. We're going to talk about media, his time in sports media. For those who joined late, Satish was one of the very, very, very first sports podcasters back in 2005, 2006. For the very few of you who've been very long-time listeners, Satish was a guest on this podcast 18 years ago. We were previewing Chiefs versus Jets. Because, again, he's a New York-based guy. He's no longer in media anymore. But when he was, he did a lot of sports talk radio. He did a lot of podcasting. So this is a guy that I want to talk to about the evolution of sports media, sports talk radio, and sports podcasting, because he was one of the very first sports podcasters to get out there. And like I said, intelligent guy, really, really nice guy. In fact, he was a college instructor teaching sports broadcasting to students out of college in New York. So he's always one of those guys willing to help young people out in the industry as well. Ted on Instagram says, I think we should get Snead back. People keep bringing this up, and I always have to push back against this. Listen, man, I was a big fan of L'Jarius Sneed in Kansas City, but he's still dealing with injuries. He really, like, this guy cannot stay healthy. He just can't. Charlene says, I'd love to see McKinnon back. He hasn't been on a team in a couple of years. By the way, somebody earlier, I never got to this, but somebody earlier was asking about Brashard Smith and why he's not practicing. It's actually a really good question. I'm not sure why he's not playing in games, I should say. I don't know. I don't know why we're not seeing much of Brashard Smith in games, because that's someone that I think the Chiefs could utilize more, especially with his speed. And some people in the national media were excited to see Brashard Smith get drafted by the Chiefs. So I'm not sure when he's going to play or get more playing time, I should say. He did have a run in this game. But, man, I would imagine you have to start getting him involved for some screen setups, because if that can work to perfection, with his breakaway speed, he can do a lot of damage. So I'd love to see them do that. 27-23 from Eric, Pat 34-24, 31-20 from Mekshan, and Daryl says 28-21. Okay, so everyone feeling pretty good. The Chiefs are going to be going back to the win column. Okay, that's good to see. I'm excited to see people are feeling good about all of that. Before we bring in Satish Shah, a couple things. First off, I want to let you know this podcast is brought to you by the Duran Cherry Foundation Celebrity Tailgate event. That'll take place on September the 27th 5:30 p.m. Central Time. This is going to be a really fun event. You can rub elbows with former Chiefs, former NFL players who will be in the building. And then they've got this amazing auction that'll take place. Pretty exciting event there. So if you haven't already, check out the Celebrity Tailgate. You can go to the Duran Cherry Foundation website at durancherryfoundation.org, and you can get your tickets there. A couple of days later, they've got the Celebrity Golf Tournament, and you can take part in that as well. All you have to do is go to durancherryfoundation.org and go to the top of the website. You'll see the tabs. Click on the event you want to attend. I recommend both, and you can sign up to attend. And from now until then, we got about, a week and a half, almost less than 2 weeks. You can work on your golf swing and play some golf with some celebrities in a fun little 2-day tournament there. So the Celebrity Tailgate on the 27th and the Celebrity Golf Tournament on the 29th and the 30th, hosted by the Duran Cherry Foundation. We're going to take a quick time out and give a shout out to our newest sponsor, DraftKings Sportsbook. Missouri, get ready. The wait is almost over. DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, is coming to the Show Me State. New Missouri customers can download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today. And when we go live, just place a $5 bet to unlock $300 in bonus bets. Starting November 17, you can create your DraftKings Sportsbook app in Missouri and get ready for launch day on December 1st. DraftKings Sportsbook brings everything you need to elevate your game day, including live in-game betting, lightning fast payouts, and endless ways to get in on the action, all right from your phone. And when we officially go live in Missouri, you'll be betting on the Sportsbook app trusted by millions. Safe, secure, and has fast money withdrawals. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and grab $300 in bonus bets with just a $5 bet when we go live on December 1st, in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 and over. Physically present in Missouri. Eligibility restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Excludes customers who redeem pre-launch sign-up offer. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos.
All right, welcome back into the Chief Zone podcast. Farzin Vousoughian here with you, and I am very excited about this upcoming guest. A lot of you guys may not know who he is, but you're going to get to know him, and you will know who he is after this podcast. This guy has been in the radio, the sports talk radio, and sports podcasting world. He's been part of sports podcasting when it started, the inception of sports podcasting. So this guy is an OG when it comes to the sports podcasting world. Excited to have him on. Satish Shah. Out in the, are you in the New York area? Where are you?
I'm in Brooklyn, man. Brooklyn, baby.
Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah.
Okay, well, welcome, Satish. Satish, you were a guest on this podcast 18 years ago. I was 16 years old at the 16 or 17.
Hey, Farzin, let me start off by this. How old do you think I look?
You look like you're in your late 30s. You look good for your age. I mean, I know how old you are, but honest to God, like if you asked me like how old you are, I would have said late 30s.
This is going to be a good podcast because I turned 50 in less than 2 weeks. So I can't believe that it's been that long, and I feel really old with you saying 18. I mean, look, I have gray in my stubble here too, but it's been a long time. It has been a long time. I've seen you on Twitter. I've seen your stuff grow. Your media apparatus, we'll call it, and all the stuff you've done. I remember you. I think you called up. We used to do an NFL show back then, and I did a related show. And we won't talk about 2015 because that's still painful. But it was just a lot of. It was back in the day when podcast. I think I was a bit early when podcasts. If you mentioned monetization and podcasts, people were like, "What are you talking about?" They wouldn't even know what podcast was, and I was a bit early to that. But that was a long time ago, and I had some good ones. It was fun. It was very enjoyable.
No, man. Listen, I appreciate you. First of all, I remember we recorded because we were getting ready to talk Chiefs and Jets. That was supposed to be Sunday Night Football. Coincidentally, this is going to be Sunday Night Football, but it's a different New York team. But they flexed out of that because both teams sucked that year. And I remember we recorded the segment. It was great. It was awesome. But dude, I fucked up. I did not record it properly, and I was like, dude. I screwed up, and you were super, super, super nice about it. We did it all over again, pretending like we didn't know what the conversation was going to be like. So you've always been very generous to me. I remember you giving me advice back then about the industry, and You were right about 99.99% of really everything in this industry. So I've certainly learned a lot over the years. Let me just back up a little bit, because I would like to talk about how you got into sports talk radio, and then we can talk about podcasting. Talk to me about your background in sports talk radio. How did you get started in that industry?
So I unfortunately, I worked at WFAN Radio in New York. Is the flagship. It's the original. It's the OG, as you said. And I actually, in 2005, everyone knows Mike and the Mad Dog, but Mike and the Mad Dog, and if you don't, Mike and the Mad Dog was the sports radio talk show back in the day. And it was, everyone tuned in, and they were so popular. They were the first sports radio show to be simulcast on a network. They were on the Yes Network, which was the Yankees Entertainment Network at the time. And in 2005, they did a 24-hour radiothon at Rockefeller Center. And if you donated a certain amount of money for their, charities and whatnot, you could actually go on air with them for about 10, 15 minutes. I did that. And they were like, wow, you're pretty good. They yelled out to the PD at the time, and I won't mention his name. And he's like, hey, you got some talent. If you go to Connecticut School of Broadcasting, maybe, you finish that, you could do some demos. Maybe we'll give you a shot. We'll see. And I'm like, oh, wow, great. I might have a shot. And I was 30 years old at the time. And I knew 10 years before, between my junior and senior year of college, which, by the way, I have a degree in mechanical engineering, as much as that actually worked out. And I actually had an internship at WCBS 880 Radio, which is a sports news radio station, but I was interning for the anchor. And he said, I think you can do this, but you have to go into a full-time, and you have an engineering degree. It's really not going to work for you doing both. And so I decided to step away and just go towards engineering and work. And then 10 years later, I ended up on Mike and the Mad Dog. I went to Connecticut School of Broadcasting, and I sent some demos out, and they're like, yeah, no, this is not good enough. And so I ended up interning with the radio station, with FAN, in their traffic department, which is not on-air traffic. It's literally it was paperwork. You went through the logs to make sure commercials ran. And that was the only way for me to get my foot in the door, so then I could do another internship on the programming side. So I literally interned for a year for free at FAN while working full-time in the city trying to do this. I got in there. I worked as a part-timer. I worked overnights. I produced, and I knew took me about 4 years in, I said, I'm not going to get a shot here. And I saw a lot of people getting on air, and I wasn't getting a shot there. And so I ended up pivoting and going into play-by-play. And so now fast forward so many years later, I have about 15 years plus experience. I did Division I basketball play-by-play, Division III basketball play-by-play, Division III football, college football play-by-play. And I did a lot of that. I ended up teaching a professor for Montclair State University, where I actually called games, teaching a broadcasting course, helping students there and mentoring them, and actually getting them to call games as well at the same time. I ended up hosting my own radio show at WPRB, which is Princeton student radio station, but it was like a 15,000 watt station, legitimate. And I ended up doing a show there every Saturday night for 2 hours a night for 3 years. And I spent a lot of my own time and money doing this, and sort of cut my teeth doing it, and sent demos to there, and I sent it to Sirius, and I sent it to other stations, and it really didn't pan out. And so I ended up just doing play-by-play and sticking with that. And I couldn't get on. I sent all those demos out to, you name it, ESPN, Fox, and all these little stations, and, IMG and Learfield, and, all these, everyone knows all these networks where they sort of, where a lot of this broadcast power is done. And it really didn't work out. But so I ended up doing a lot of that. And it started way back when I ran into My Sports Radio, which was in 2006. And I was like, hey, I want to do a podcast. I don't know what this is, but it's basically hook up a microphone into your computer. And I worked in technology for 15, 20 years. So I knew exactly how the setup was going to work. I didn't have to worry about a mixer, this, that, and the other. And so I would just do weekly podcasts on the Mets. And then Sal Capaccio, and people, if you are in the AFC and Bills play the Chiefs all the time, Sal Capaccio, who does a radio show there now, who covers the Bills week after week. I mean, he's big time.
Yes.
He was one of those guys. Myself, and this man named Johnny Vaughn, who rest his soul, passed away a number of years ago. We ended up doing an NFL roundtable show during football season, which was an absolute blast. And we would just have stuff that we would do, every week on the football scene. And he was able to parlay that to an opportunity. He was actually down in Tampa. He was a high school teacher and high school football coach. He was able to parlay that into an opportunity to go to Buffalo, where he was originally from. Ended up on, I forget the station, GHT, I want to say. I'm not sure.
I don't know what it is, but it's something along those lines, yeah.
He ended up being on the station and doing some talk shows, and before you know it, years later, he's working the sidelines for the Bills all these years later. And, it's funny because over the years, these 20 years that I've had this path, I've met so many people who have had huge success. I mean, if you watched the Chiefs and the Eagles this past weekend, it was on Fox. I've known Kevin Burkhardt since 2006. And I've spoken to him from time to time, and he's the same exact person that was, and there's been stories written about him of how, he was a used car salesman and working, and just all the drive. And I've known all these people that have worked their way up and have made it. And so before, I used to be jealous, I used to be annoyed, and now I just look at them saying, hey, you know what? I live vicariously through them now. I know so many, people on another friend of mine is Mark Malusis, who does sports for WPIX here in New York on television. He's their anchor. And so I talk to him from time to time, and it's all these guys that I know and started off at these positions where they were part-timers just trying to get through, that have achieved this success. And I know I never got to where I wanted to get to, but I sort of live vicariously through them now, and I'm happy. I'm happy for them, and I'm happy that I know these people, and I can have a talk with them, a conversation with them. I can have dinner with them, and I'm like, you know what, that's sort of, even though I might have a little bitterness that I never was able to achieve what I wanted to achieve, that at least I can take pride in knowing these guys and seeing them succeed.
Yeah, I love talking about this stuff, like the sports talk radio and whatnot. And by the way, can you see that on your end?
I can.
Okay, so for those who don't know, everyone in Kansas City knows who BJ Kissel is. He worked for the Chiefs for a very long time, and now he's kind of doing his own thing. I remember Kay Adams had BJ Kissel and Sal Capaccio on. So for those asking who is Sal Capaccio, because a lot of people in Kansas City won't know, that's him right there on your screen. So to back up a little bit, because you mentioned mysportsradio.com. I think that website came out in 2005. Mm-hmm. That was like the first sports podcasting website. Now there are like hundreds of them. Barstool Sports and ESPN have their own podcasting section.
Gazillion.
Yeah, there are a bunch of them now. I remember on iTunes, there was like a little section for podcasts. I'm like, what the hell is this? I click it and I come across like a wrestling podcast and a football podcast, all from My Sports Radio. And I wasn't a big baseball guy, but I checked out a little bit of your stuff. You hosted a podcast called Baseball in New York, where you were talking about the Mets and the Yankees.
Yep.
So My Sports Radio had, guys who, were building their way up in the sports radio industry. By the way, Sal Capaccio is not the only famous person from My Sports Radio. You know who the other famous person is, right?
Anish Shroff, who is now the play-by-play guy for the Carolina Panthers.
Oh, I did not know that. That was not going to be my answer.
Alex Reamer, who was a guy who was on Sports Talk Radio up in Boston. I think EEI, he was on there. I mean, he was from My Sports Radio. That's when he was like 12 years old. I think he actually was like on late night television at one point.
Yes, he was, but that's not what he's famous for anymore.
No, he's not. We'll go there.
Listen, I like giving that guy shit because he always had a lot to say. But yeah. Anyway, My Sports Radio was so interesting because, they made an exception for Alex because, as you said, he was like 12, 11 when he started podcasting. But you guys were all like behind the scenes or producers or maybe like evening co-hosts. And do you know who Joni McDonald is?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so he was on the podcast last week. I've been a guest on his show and his Eagles podcast that he used to do many times. And he does a late night show on the weekends for Infinity Sports Network, which used to be CBS Sports Radio. And I told him, I'm like, I enjoy listening to people who like sports talk radio guys on the weekends, because those are the hustlers. Those are the people who work a job during the week in sports talk radio, and then they're trying to do more sports talk radio on the national level. Plus, like if something big happens in college football or in the NFL, they're the first ones that get to actually have a jab at a take on those kinds of things. So I always enjoy listening to those people.
The other thing, if I can interject, what's happening now also is because of social media and impressions, a lot of sports talk radio, and this is my critique for FAN as well. I like saying, yeah, I know I didn't really get to where I wanted to go, but in the end, what happened was I didn't leave FAN. FAN sort of left me. In a lot of radio stations, sports radio stations, and I'm not sure about in Kansas City, but at least in New York, it becomes hot take land. They put out stuff there which are hot takes. They can turn into impressions on social media.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm, meat and potatoes type of guy where I like that conversation. And a lot of those guys are either late at night or on the weekends. And I've sort of felt that now for a while, especially now because on the weekends, you don't have as many spots. You could take more calls. You can have more conversations back and forth. And I think there is, in a lot of these big markets, you get a lot more guys who are, I'm not going to say much more intelligent, but it's more of a back and forth conversation as opposed to just taking and making a hot opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, you're right. That is kind of how a lot of people get a lot of the attention. Sometimes it's intentionally done just to get that, which I don't really like, and you know all about that stuff. But I do want to talk about the podcasting land because I still remember when I started podcasting in 2007 for thesportstuff.com, which, was a place where a lot of my sports radio listeners went to because they wanted to podcast as well. And I think a couple of people from MSR, My Sports Radio, also jumped over to the sports stuff, which was short for TSS. Unfortunately, none of those websites exist anymore. But I just remember seeing podcasting grow. But back then, podcasting was frowned upon a lot, like blogs.
Yes.
You if you wanted any legitimacy, like if you wanted to interview someone, you had to say, "Oh, I host an internet radio show." And now, like, if you say that today, people are going to be like, "What?" But now you can just say podcasting, and people are like, "Oh, podcasting! Yeah, everyone has a podcast now."
Yeah. Back then, I had to say, "Well, I'm a producer for WFAN, but I was wondering if you could come onto my podcast." And so I interviewed Buster Olney. I interviewed a bunch of guys that way by sort of using that other resume part of saying, "Hey, you know what WFAN is? Why don't you come on here?" And that's what worked for me. But it was, it was frowned upon back then. I mean, you couldn't really, it was hard. It was hard trying to get guests and talk because it was not taken seriously like it is now. I mean, now, whether it's the Ringer, I mean, there's a friend of mine, John Jastrzemski, he won a contest, I want to say in 2013, he used to be JJ After Dark. Now it's baseball. It's New York, the podcast on the Ringer. And he actually won a contest, ended up hosting his own show at WFAN. He did that for a number of years. And then the Ringer essentially got him, and they, whatever it was, said, "We want you to do a podcast for us." And instead of hosting every night, 5 nights a week, he ends up doing 4 or 5 podcasts. He had his face plastered in Times Square. They're sending him out to Super Bowls and whatnot. And he's not on air anymore. And that's when I knew, when I saw that, I was like, wow, it told me right then and there that podcasting is at the same level as radio. And that was about 5 years ago. And that's when I realized and recognized that it's different now. If they're trying to get hosts to be podcasters, it's no longer a podcast or internet show. It's something much more legitimate than that.
I've got to ask, I don't know if you can really provide any insight on this, but I've been wanting to know for a long time, like, what the hell happened to My Sports Radio? Because I remember in 2008, Barack Obama got elected and the website was not working. And if you wanted to go to the website, he said, "Oh, change is happening on the website." And he was making a reference to Obama's slogan back then. And he said, "Big ups, Barack." And it stayed that way on the website for like years. And all of a sudden now you just can't go on it anymore. What happened to My Sports Radio and Sam, the founder?
Honestly, I think, this was Sam Cooten. It was his venture. And I think he just ran out of money and he couldn't, the only way you have to use bandwidth, you need hosting, you need, you have to pay for, it's all of that. And back then you have to generate revenue. And the only way to do that is by selling advertising, because there's no other way to generate revenue now you can monetize. But back then, how can you tell someone, "Hey, we want to do commercials on our podcast"? There was no metric to measure that.
Now, keep in mind, this is like 2007, 2008 at the time.
Exactly. Yeah. You're talking almost 20 years ago. So now you can get all those metrics like that. But back then, you're not going to say, well, you're not going to get the local pizzeria to advertise on a podcast that's going nationally. So you're going to have to go to like insurance companies, for example, like Progressive. But why is Progressive going to pay X amount of dollars to advertise on a podcast that might have 500 or 1,000 listeners? And so I think all of that, when you take that into account, the inability really to monetize and generate some type of revenue to keep the hosting of those podcasts. And let's be honest, we did it out of our own time. I never got paid for it. A lot of us didn't get paid for it. At some point, a lot of us ended up using them as sound checks to get another job, to get something else. And you're going to lose talent that way. And so you have to keep replenishing talent while at the same time finding a way to monetize a medium that has yet been taken to a level where people can recognize it as a legitimate medium. I think when you take all that into account, I think unfortunately he ran out of money trying to keep this going. As for what happened after that, I have no idea, but I'm pretty sure that was the end of My Sports Radio.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. They really did pave the way, I think. Whether some people realize it or not, that was really the first sports podcasting website, like we kind of said at the start of the segment, and now there's a bunch. So all good things come to an end, I guess.
Yeah, you could say that. You could say that.
By the way, I've got to ask, because I knew you were in the New York area. So my friend Zach, he has co-hosted and guest co-hosted this podcast with me. He did live in New York, I think in 2019. And then right when the pandemic happened, he kind of got out of there and he just ended up getting a new job and never went back to New York. So he was telling me about what New York was like. I've always wanted to see New York. I've seen it in movies so many times. I've played it in like the Spider-Man games and Grand Theft Auto. It's like, man, I really want to see New York just once in my life. So, okay, that's a lie. I've been to New York once. So my family, when we were leaving Iran, we lived in Turkey for a year, and then we came to the U.S. The first place we were in was New York, but I was like 3. I don't remember anything. What is New York City like? Like for someone that's never been to New York City, when they ask, what is it like? What do you say?
You know, it's funny because I was born and raised here. I was the first. My dad came from India in 1971. And then my mom came in 72. I was born in 75. And I was the first person in our entire family, which is now about probably 85, 90 people, to be born in the U.S. I'm the first one.
Oh, wow.
And so it was just my mom, my dad, and me. And so I was born and raised in Brooklyn. We moved to Staten Island. I moved back to Brooklyn. But I've been here my entire life. I went to school here, went to college here, ended up working in the city here. I never lived anywhere else. The way I can describe New York is that it's there are
you can hear a siren in the background right now.
There you go. You hear that all the time. You probably hear a car zipping by with a shotgun muffler too. That's Brooklyn for you. I mean, it's eclectic. It's so different. There's so much. I know people don't like this word, but there's diversity, and then there's patches of it. So you'll have Chinatown in Manhattan, but you also have Chinatown here in Brooklyn, and probably about a mile from me, you have Chinatown by Sunset Park. It's just there's so many. It's eclectic. There's so many things to do. I think if you're young, to live in the city for a year or two is pretty cool because you get to experience it. I mean, there's so many sights and sounds and things to do. You can. It's I'll give you an example. The NFL, when it comes to a city, it takes over that city. I'm pretty sure if the NFL held the Super Bowl in Kansas City is. It's just Super Bowl, really nothing else. If you go, whether it's Indianapolis or in New York, when they came here for the Super Bowl, I want to say 2012. I can't remember.
Yeah, right around that time.
They had the Super Bowl at MetLife Stadium, and they held all their Super Bowl activities in New York, and you wouldn't have known there was anything NFL related going on in Manhattan because there were so many things going on. People would go see a Broadway show. They're down by South Street Seaport. They're hanging out, having food. They're eating something in Little Italy or by Hell's Kitchen. There was so many different places to eat, so many different places to go, different museums to go to. Nothing really encapsulates or can take over New York outside of, I would say, probably the Knicks, winning a title, or the Rangers winning the title, and maybe even the Yankees and Mets to a certain degree. It's really, it's so different than anywhere else you go to. I can't really explain it other than it's sort of like going to a place where you don't know what to do first. Do I take the ferry or go to the Statue of Liberty? Or do I go to South Street Seaport? Do I want to check out the Javits Center at Comic-Con? Or do I want to go up to Times
That's
Square?
right, Comic-Con.
I mean, I remember in 2003, we had the anniversary just passed the blackout. In 2003, I think the entire Eastern Seaboard or Northeast Corridor lost power. And I was working on 23rd, you wouldn't know this, but 23rd and Park in lower Midtown. Power was gone completely. And so all the lights were down. If any buildings were on, they were running off diesel generators. And I was in a building where we ran off diesel generators. I ended up having to sleep in the building. But if you went outside at 9-10 o'clock, it was pitch dark. We have never seen Manhattan pitch dark at night because there are times where the light is so bright, especially by Times Square, it feels like daylight. And it's so different. And when I go to another city and I'll hang out there, I'm like, this is really cool. And I realize I'm like, but I can't live here because I'm so just used to New York City. Now, don't get me wrong. It can drive me nuts. The subway and the traffic and the chaos, and there's always stuff going on. But I think if you come here to just experience it, one, you plan what you do. You can't just arrive and say, all right, what do we do first? Because guaranteed you're going to waste your money, you're going to get lost, and you're going to waste time. But I would say everyone should visit it once just to see what it's like. And if you're afraid of the subway, I get it. Everyone sees the news and all that. Understand completely. I took the subway for 30 years. I have seen so many strange things. And there is chaos. Don't get me wrong. You can take a cab if you want, the express bus, whatever it is. But there's so many different things to do in Manhattan. And it's such a different feel. New York in the fall or in the spring is utterly beautiful because you're walking around this concrete jungle and you're not cooking in the heat. But there's still so many things to do. Sometimes there's nothing. One of my fondest memories was as a kid going there and just getting a slice of pizza and walking across the Brooklyn Bridge while eating, because you have everything on the left and everything on the right, and just all this, just this beauty that you really can't mimic anywhere else. You take a ferry, and you could take a ferry that goes all the way from the West Side down to Wall Street towards Brooklyn and back. You only have to pay $8 round trip, $4 each way, but you get a view of everything. I can't blame people for being scared of the city because there's a lot of stuff going on. There's so many people here and there's a lot of chaos, but for the people that were born here, it's what we are. We were born in like the crucible, so to speak. But it's really cool. I mean, it is. Now, don't get me wrong. I will drive into the city every once a month, couple of months, and a bunch of my friends and I will hang out. We'll grab dinner. We'll eat, and everything's expensive, as you would expect.
Yeah.
Congestion pricing doesn't help because you're paying. But, there are times where we'll just hang out. And we'll just walk and talk. And I'll remember when I was like in college and 20 years old, and I'd take the train in. We catch a movie and grab some grub and just hang out till 11, 12 o'clock at night and grab the ferry home. So you can't experience it. You cannot be, no one can explain it to you. You have to come here and sort of experience it yourself.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't get me wrong. You don't want to go up to Washington Heights at 3 o'clock in the morning and not know where you are. You don't want to go to East New York at, 11 o'clock at night in Brooklyn. And especially if you're a tourist, there's really not a lot there. You want to stick with Manhattan and certain parts of, Forest Hills or Park Slope in Brooklyn Heights, stuff like that. Walk across the Brooklyn Bridge. There's a lot of stuff to experience that you're really not going to experience anywhere else.
I know, like visiting like the Barstool Sports website, they made it clear at one point that they're in New York City, and if you just look up their on their website, you can find their address. So I was really curious to see where they are in New York City. And there's also a host on Infinity Sports Network named Zach Gelb, who does a tremendous job, by the way. And it's funny, at the intro of every radio show he does, he actually gives out the address and what floor he is on. Some radios do that, and I'm like, okay, I'm really curious to know where this. I have this weird obsession, Satesh, with studios. I just love seeing radio studios and what they look like. A friend of mine is a producer for a news station, Mark Van Sickle, and I got to visit KCMO Talk Radio. Their studio is actually really, really nice, but that's besides the point. So I'm always curious to know like where their studio is. and it's like in the middle of all those buildings in New York City. I always kind of just like look around. I used to work as like not like a part-time or anything, but I worked in media production at the T-Mobile Center. It used to be called the Sprint Center for basketball events, whatever, Monster Jam, whatever they have. And I was like, where the hell do employees park? And they would give me a parking pass and whatnot. But I'm always wondering, like in New York, like if I'm worried about that stuff in Kansas City, where the hell do these people park? Especially if you work in radio, you can't be late for your job.
When I worked at FAN, 2008, we moved to 345 Hudson Street.
Yes.
So
that's the address Zach Gelb reads.
Yep. And I worked there for years. In fact, I worked the very first overnight there when we moved, which was a disaster because everything kept breaking. You could have commercials, microphones would die, the phones would die. So I did not envy that first night. But as for parking there, good luck. You could find. I used to work the overnights, so you could find street parking at certain times. But there were times where I would end up with the flat, and I'd have to pull out my pump and get my tire pumped up so to get out. I got caught in a blizzard there once where I'm trying to get snow off the car so I can get home back to Brooklyn. A lot of people, you can find street parking. If you're fortunate enough to get an NYP plate, which is New York Press, you can park almost anywhere. A lot of people park in the parking lots, but I mean, I couldn't do that because the amount of money you made on a shift, half of it would go to pay for the parking garage. So, some people would take the train in or the bus in and take the train back. It's not easy. Now it's even worse. When I worked there, I think my last shift there was probably right around COVID or right before COVID. And parking was getting pretty bad. Now it's almost impossible. If you drove past there, it's almost nowhere to park. It's Manhattan. I mean, parking in Manhattan, it is brutal. Usually when we end up hanging out, my friends and I, and catching a movie, I intentionally make sure we catch something at 7:30 so I can, because a lot of meters stop at 7. So I can park at, I'll pay for half an hour at a meter, so then I don't have to worry about parking in a lot. But around there, that is right by the Holland Tunnel. It's right by the West Side. It's right by like UPS Depot. There is so much. It's right by, there's a college around there too. I mean, Webster Hall is not far away. It is so much. There's so much happening right in that spot that if you have to work there and you're driving in at night, unless you pay for a parking lot or a secret spot where you don't mind walking a mile away, God help you. It was not fun. It was not fun parking around there.
Man, time has flown by. I'm just having fun having this conversation about media and New York City, just kind of learning that city. Let's talk some Chiefs Giants.
Sure.
Obviously, you're in the New York area, like we've already talked about, so you have a really good grasp of everything going on with the teams there. Before I get into that, obviously the Chiefs are in very unfamiliar territory. Never been 0-2 in the Patrick Mahomes era. Never lost 3 in a row in the Mahomes era, dating back to the Super Bowl. Obviously, they got whipped in the Super Bowl, and now they lose these 2 games, both very close, but still a loss is a loss. And they're coming off a season where they won a lot of close games that came down the wire and may have gotten away with some stuff in the end, let's just say. I want to know from you, because I listen, you're not in KC, so I would love your outsider's perspective. How do you view the Kansas City Chiefs right now from where you are?
I watched them last week. Well, I shouldn't say that. I caught bits and pieces of them last week. I was watching the Giants and the Mets, and my son afterwards wanted to take hours worth of batting practice. So I caught some of the highlights. But the way I look at the Chiefs is when I look at how they played against the Eagles this past week, and let's be honest, that's a game they should have won. In my eyes, when you have Travis Kelce, essentially, it's not an interception. That's a fumble out of his hands. The game flipped right there. You could go up 17-10, I think 17-13. Instead, it goes the other way. You're down 20-10. You're down, instead of being up by 4 points, you're down by 2 scores. And that changes the entire complexion of the game. So when I look at the Kansas City Chiefs, I know 2 things. 3 things. 1, I love Pat Mahomes because he wore a Mets jersey one time walking into the stadium. And, his dad pitched for my team, and I'm like, dude, if you're gonna wear, everyone likes wearing a Yankees cap or Yankees. If you're gonna wear, I don't care what your dad's name on. If you're gonna wear a Mets jersey, road jersey, no less, and you played shortstop in college, you're my guy. I love it. So as far as I'm concerned, Pat Mahomes can't do no wrong. He's my guy. If they can win every Super Bowl for the next decade and prevent the Eagles from ever winning again, I'm happy. Now, as for what I saw, they got whooped last year in the Super Bowl. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's a game, they were on the road. No, excuse me. Were they on the road? Were they
this past Sunday? No, they were at home.
They were at home. Excuse me. So they were at home. They fall in a game that they should have won, but they stood toe-to-toe with the Eagles.
Yeah.
An Eagles team that essentially is the same as last year. I wasn't aware if Jalen Carter was playing or not. Did they give him a 1-game suspension?
So that first game, because he got ejected before the first line of scrimmage snap, they considered that the suspension. So yeah, he played that game.
So he was in this game, and yet even with that, now you would know better than me in terms of how that game went. I know about the tush push. I saw what you were tweeting about in terms of the media getting, copyrighted and whatnot.
Yep.
But when I look at the Chiefs and I see that they're 0-2 and they lost the way they did, they are not going 0-3. The spread is 6.5. Maybe the Giants are able to pull this to within a touchdown late. And I say a big maybe. But when I look at the Chiefs, I look at another team that, I look at a team that is going to be on a mission in a very difficult division, in a very difficult conference. But you have an all-time coach and an all-time quarterback, and they stood toe-to-toe with the Super Bowl champions in a game that they should have won, and they didn't. And they're going to be angry. They're going to be upset. They're coming back. They're coming on the road to face a Giants team that's looking for a home opener that started 0-2. And as far as I'm concerned, and we'll get into this, they have, for a team that had I think they were 3-14 last year, they have arguably the hardest schedule in the NFL. Yeah. And it's not going to get any easier. They're going to face the Chargers after the Chiefs. I look at how you guys played the Chargers, how you played the Chiefs. I'm sorry, how you play the Eagles.
Yeah.
And so I just see a team that is going to be motivated not to go 0-3 on the season.
Here's another reason why the Chiefs are not going 0-3, at least according to, I don't know if you're familiar with Don LaGreca of ESPN New York. He's saying that the Chiefs got their ass kicked in the Super Bowl and they're 0-2, and the league is still rigging games for the Chiefs, allegedly.
If that was the case, then the tush push would have been short.
Exactly.
I love Don, and you know what? We can say that the games are. It's so subjective when it comes to officiating. Can we rig it? I wouldn't put it past the NFL. And I really wouldn't. I wouldn't put it. There's so much. I am not a gambler, and I'm not going to get into an argument with anyone else. People are going to find my Twitter handle. They'll come at me. Forget it. I'm not a gambler. I'm against all of it, mainly because of it's a regressive tax on people betting, and it takes money out of their pocket. If you were successful on DraftKings, they will blacklist you. You will not. If you kept making money repeatedly on DraftKings and FanDuel, a ton of money, they would not let you sit on the platform. It's the same reason that if you go to Atlantic City and you started wrecking blackjack or wrecking the poker table, they would escort you out.
That's Dana White, the president of the UFC. He claims, I don't know if it's really true or not, he claims he's been banned from casinos because he just beats everyone in blackjack or poker, whatever it is.
Because the house always wins. And so, to me, when the NFL gets in bed with gambling, you're going to have all these sports leagues. You never know how any of this comes into play. That being said, they don't need the NFL to rig this. I will tell you exactly why. The Giants, and I have been a lifelong Giants fan, the Giants, the last decade, we're talking 10 years, not including the first 2 weeks this season, have a record of 57, 109, and 1. They are averaging less than 6 wins per season for the last, not 2 years, 5 years, for the last 10 years. They've had only 1 winning season in the last 8 seasons and 2 winning seasons in the last 12. They are the epitome of a bad franchise. In fact, if you look at what the Giants have done since 2015, 2012, right after they won the Super Bowl, the Giants in that period have had 6 coaches, 3 GMs. They have been outscored on average. They have a negative point differential every season in the last decade. And 5 of those years, 5 of the 8 previous seasons, or 5 of the last 8 seasons, they have given up more than 100 points to their opponents in a season. They have an average margin of 7 to 9 points per game that they're giving up more than they have. It's just, they are a bad team, a bad franchise. They have been a joke for a long time. And so a team like that, they either find new ways to lose, or they do just enough to lose excruciatingly bad, which is this past weekend against the Cowboys.
So I've got to ask you, because I remember when Russell Wilson got traded to the Broncos, and of course, me being a Chiefs fan and doing a Chiefs podcast, I pay attention to the AFC and the AFC West very closely. I mean, everyone thought the Broncos were in contention for the AFC, and that was the same year the Chiefs traded away Tyreek Hill, and the Chiefs were supposed to regress and all of that. And Russell Wilson just never got going in Denver. I'll never forget, there was one game where the Broncos were getting ready to play in overtime, and it was a very low-scoring game. Broncos fans were leaving. They were done. They didn't care. The Russell Wilson era in Denver was just so interesting. His stats were not awful, but he just wasn't putting the team in positions to win. How is Russell Wilson, considering Jackson Dart just got drafted also, how is Russell Wilson being viewed in New York?
As a placeholder. And you got to tap the brakes on Russell Wilson this past week, because I'll put it with this. If the Green Bay Packers win the Super Bowl, Jerry Jones will finally have another Super Bowl ring after not winning one for 30 years. Okay. Micah Parsons, and I get it, whatever. He's an imbecile. To trade Micah Parsons, he essentially helped Green Bay. It has a great shot of winning the Super Bowl. He'll get a ring. That being said, that defense is not the same without Micah Parsons. Russell Wilson, if you look week 1 against the Redskins, and then you look at week 2 against the Cowboys, there wasn't the same type of pressure he was facing. Not anywhere close to that same type of pressure. Second, the defensive backfield for the Cowboys decimated with injuries. When you take those 2 things into account, Russell Wilson had the time to throw, and the Giants have weapons. Malik Neighbors has the ability to become a top 5 receiver in this league. Wan'Dale Robinson, who has been mediocre, finally had a breakout game, probably the best game of his career as a Giant. And Cam Skattebo is a nice player, nice weapon. They have some weapons, tight end wise, not really, but you take what you can get. But they have weapons. It's a reason why almost 300 yards passing went to those 2 receivers. Skattebo got some work out of the backfield, catching the ball, running the ball. Tracy was okay. But the story was that the Cowboys did not have the defensive pressure. Micah Parsons not being there made a difference. The defensive backfield, on top of it being injured, made a difference. And those 2 combined, along with Russell Wilson, even though he might be 36, 37 years old, an older guy, he can still throw a deep ball. He might not be able to move, but the one thing we know with these guys, the arm is still there. Eli Manning towards the end, he still could throw the ball. These guys, Aaron Rodgers can still throw the ball. He's not as mobile, but he can still throw the ball. Russell Wilson can still throw a pretty deep ball, and he showed it. And so when you take the combination of those 3 things, it's one of the reasons why the Giants scored 37 points second week of the season, the first time they've done that in God knows how many years. Will he do it this week against the Chiefs? I'll tell you this. The Giants' interior of offensive line the first week was pillaged. Andrew Thomas was not available this past week. His guy, they signed a Hudson, who was a 2-year deal to fill in. He had 4 penalties on the first drive, got yanked out for a kid named Membo, put him in, whatever it is. If the Chiefs get pressure up the middle, there isn't a place, there isn't anywhere in the world Russell Wilson is going to have the same type of game that he had this past week, because the pressure was not there this past Sunday. And if the Chiefs can do that, that changes everything. And so I think Russell Wilson had a great game. Don't get me wrong. I think he put up spectacular numbers. How can you argue with that? But it was a combination of his receivers having phenomenal games to go against a backfield that was hurt and a pass rush that wasn't as abusive as it was the week before.
I know when it comes to interior defensive linemen, everyone talks about Jalen Carter, Chris Jones, those type of guys. Dexter Lawrence is right behind those guys. And when you look at that defense, and I'm looking at Pro Football Focus, and again, I've always said PFF is a nice reference for grades. It's not everything to me, but man, I mean, they've got good things to say about that defensive line for the Giants, which could cause some problems because the Chiefs' offensive line gradually better than last year, but still a little inconsistent. But the rest of that Giants defense, especially the secondary, I mean, they've certainly had their issues outside of Flott. And the Chiefs, you know, we don't know if Xavier Worthy is going to play or not. We'll learn more as the week goes on. But man, I'm just a little, I'm not sure what to make of that matchup. The Chiefs offensive line versus the Giants defensive line. I think that's going to be the difference maker.
Well, the Giants, for everyone, they had with Burns and Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence and the youngster Carter. And they're like, okay, we have guys, we have first round draft picks, we have, you know, high price free agents on here, get pressure on the quarterback. They didn't do that enough on Dak Prescott, which is why he won his 15th straight game against the Giants. I mean, let me tell you that again. He has won 15 games in a row against the Giants. So that if you have any type of consistent pressure on the quarterback, you're not giving up 40 points. You're just not. So what's happened is they're going to have to find a way to get consistent pressure on Mahomes. Here's the problem. He might not be as mobile as Jaden Daniels from the week before in terms of Mahomes, but he's a heck of a lot more mobile than Dak Prescott. And the Giants are going to have to not only get pressure on him, they're going to have to contain the edges. And they're going to have to do that while also maintaining some type of presence in the secondary where Mahomes doesn't chew him up down the field or even underneath. You know, Pat can throw the ball deep or he'll just slice you up underneath. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why the Giants lost this past week, because they weren't able to get pressure on Prescott on a regular basis. But on top of that, when it counted, you know, the Cowboys have a kicker who can kick 70 yards, for God's sakes. If you saw what he kicked a 64-yard field goal in this game. And then on top of it, they played prevent coverage, giving the Cowboys 10, 12 yards down the field to throw underneath. If you give that to Mahomes, he's going to eat it up all day long. If you play zone coverage, he's going to find the spot. I think the only way the Giants really have an opportunity to win this game is for those guys on the interior to get pressure and to hit Mahomes and to hit him enough to where, I'm not going to say rattle him, but to screw up the timing just enough where it gives them a chance. You're going to have to force 3 and outs. And for the offense, you know, to generate some type of offense and not be what they were in week 1 and a little better and half of what they were in week 2.
I remember watching that at the end of regulation for the Jets, or not the Jets, I'm sorry, the Giants and the Cowboys before the Fox changed it over to the Chiefs game. And I saw the Cowboys just casually give a couple extra yards for their kicker. I'm like, oh, they have a lot of confidence in their kicker. And then he made the kick to force overtime. I'm like, okay, that's why they have confidence in him. But yeah, man, I'm just looking at this matchup here. Yeah, that's the only thing that really scares me from a Chiefs side of things. I think, like, if the Giants want to pull off an upset, I don't think they'll listen. Kansas City's left guard, who's trying to learn, former left tackle last year, drafted out of BYU the year before. I mean, he just hasn't really come together. I mean, there was a blitz from the Eagles. He just let the guy walk around him. Thankfully, Mahomes was able to pick up on that and got rid of the ball quickly. But that's the big concern with me. Like,
let me ask you about the defensive front for the Chiefs. Now, obviously, I don't really follow the Chiefs outside of just, you know, Mahomes. How can you not have Kelsey and, you know, Taylor Swift? But, you know, what is the defensive front for the Chiefs? What is it like at this point? The defensive front, 7.
They're paying a lot of money to Chris Jones and George Karlaftis. Karlaftis just got paid right before training camp, but for the love of God, they can't get a push. They could not get to Jalen Hurts. Once they started blitzing more often, that's when they started getting the Jalen Hurts. I remember several times, I'm like, Jalen Hurts has all this time in the pocket. Like, someone that's getting paid millions and millions of dollars, like one of the highest paid players at their positions, do something. Chris Jones, listen, he gets a lot of pressures, doesn't get a lot of sacks. I guess pressures can be good if you can turn them into ill-advised passes, which unfortunately the Chiefs were not able to get a lot of those last year. But man, it's just we're not seeing that production from the defensive line. They drafted 2 young defensive linemen, Omar Norman-Lott from Tennessee, who got a nice big hit on Jalen Hurts last week, and then Ashton Gelati, who's getting more and more playing time in the 3rd round. They got him from Louisville. I think those guys are going to help. They're still a work in progress, but the Chiefs just can't really generate a lot of pressure unless they get one of those linebackers or DB blitzes, which Spags loves to do, and you know all about that. His history with the Giants has been very well talked about here in Kansas City, what he did against Tom Brady. So unless they're blitzing, it just feels like Kansas City has a really difficult time. It's like they're counting to 5 Mississippi just to get to Jalen Hurts.
I think that, and that's probably where it lies. For both teams. It's what the defensive front can do to the opposing offensive line. I think that determines this game a lot. But to a certain extent, but then also Mahomes' ability to create. See, Russell Wilson cannot create. He's past that point where he can create with his legs. He just doesn't, unless a lane opens up and he can take off down the field for 10, 15 yards. He's not the type of guy that can scramble out and look downfield. He's not the same guy to do that. Mahomes can, and that will be the difference. I think the Giants will probably have a few set plays for Jackson Dart to come in, but I don't know if they're going to let him throw down the field. They might have a screen out to the side, a little bubble screen, maybe a check down, maybe a zone read, and then you have a slant. It's just something really quick, just to throw the defense off balance a little bit if they're getting pressure up the middle. And I think that is going to be the biggest concern for the Giants, is pressure up the middle, right into the face of Russell Wilson. And if that happens, if we see that happen in the first quarter, it's going to be a long day for the Giants. If it doesn't, then the Giants have a shot. Unfortunately, I just don't see the Giants being able to do that. I think the Giants are going to have issues, and it's going to be because of that offensive line. Andrew Thomas may come back, but he's been dealing with the Liz Frank injury. He missed the first 2 weeks. He might miss this week. He might miss next week. We don't know.
I got to ask you your score prediction. What do you? I'm going 23-20. Kansas City should win by more, but they always make these kinds of games interesting. So I'm curious what you think. What do you think the score is going to be?
30-14 Chiefs.
30-14. Wow. You if you lived in Kansas City, you would be the most confident person in Kansas City.
See, well, you have to understand. I'll tell you this right now. The Giants play. If you want to look at the Giants real quick, the Giants, they play the Chiefs. Then they play the Chargers. Then they're playing at New Orleans. Then they're home to host Philly. They're at Denver, at Philly, at San Francisco, at Chicago. I haven't told you the bye week yet. At home for Green Bay, at Detroit, at New England, bye week, December 8th. The Giants are going to be obliterated, if not with injuries, then, offensive line issues. I just don't see their opportunity to start 1-1 was this past Sunday. There is not a soft spot. And you could give me New Orleans, but New Orleans Superdome, that is a different animal. The Giants have always had problems playing down in New Orleans, always. And now they're going to go down there. And to me, if you're going to start Jackson Dart, that's the only place to start him because you're on the road at New Orleans. It's the easiest one. Then you're home against Philly. Do you let him start at New Orleans and then face the Eagles twice in 3 weeks and then Denver in between? The Giants are in a predicament where if they win 3 games, it will be fortunate. And so when I look at it, it's not just that they're a bad team and they've been a bad team for a long time. And yeah, they're having pieces in there. Abdul Carter is nice. Thibodeau hasn't lived up to what he's been. Dexter Lawrence is an all-pro. They have weapons, but they're facing playoff caliber talent in the Commanders, in the Cowboys to a certain extent, the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Eagles, the Broncos. You're facing teams, the 49ers, even with their injuries. Mac Jones is, guess what? Purdy might be back by the 1st of November. When you look at everything they have to face, they are facing quality teams, if not elite teams. And the one thing we've seen from the Giants is they know how to lose. They have yet to find a way to win these games. Since 2017, they have lost. They're 3 for 3 on. I should say this. Let me repeat this. Since 2017, they have had 3 field goals of 60 or more yards as time expired by opponents to win games over them. Think about that. You're not only bad, you're unlucky. If a team can hit a 60-yard field goal to beat you as time expires, and they do it 3 times, the luck is bad. And then you're playing prevent defense against a team with probably the best kicker in the league, or at least the best leg. And then you have, you commit 170 yards in penalties. You find ways to lose. The question is, how are they going to find ways to win? And I really, looking at the schedule, I have no idea. I really don't. You maybe hope for injuries with some of these teams. Maybe Caleb Williams, in Chicago has problems. Maybe Detroit has issues. Maybe Jaden Daniels gets injured. Maybe Minnesota's, the Vikings with J.J. McCarthy is not the same. Maybe, who knows? But now you're hoping on what ifs for the opponent so you can have an opportunity to win, which tells you your personnel is just not of that caliber. And to me, when I look at that, I thought they would have maybe a better chance to win. No, they don't. Coming into the season, I just don't see it. And then when you look at everything and you wrap it all up, you realize at some point, if you're having different coaches and you have GMs and you have different players and you have different quarterbacks, it's the owner that's really to blame at the end of all this.
I got a couple questions. Are you good for a couple more questions?
Go for it.
Okay, because I was gonna say the way you're kind of describing things, it does remind me so much of the reaction I heard from Giants fans about the Hard Knocks, the off-season version, and just how big of a disaster that was. Oh, go ahead. Were you gonna add something?
No, go ahead.
I did want to ask you this because I remember when he was the offensive coordinator of the Chiefs in 2012, the last year before Andy Reid, Romeo Crennel was the head coach. People were not happy with Brian Daboll. I remember the Chiefs were getting whooped by the Raiders, and the Raiders have been bad for a very long time. And he was just caught. The cameras caught him laughing on the sidelines. He thought something was funny. That's kind of how he's remembered here in Kansas City. But listen, I'm happy for him. He obviously did a great job in Alabama, and then did a great job with the Buffalo Bills, and he is where he is. He won Coach of the Year, but that's feels like forever ago, I guess, in New York. But I'm curious, how is Brian Daboll perceived?
Oh, the fans are starting to really despise him. When Daniel Jones goes to Indianapolis and he's playing behind a great offensive line, he has some receivers and a running back.
That's what I wanted to ask you next.
But Daniel Jones here, as far as I'm concerned, Daniel Jones is one of those guys that was just like, he didn't have it. And you know what? Listen, I'll be honest. Indianapolis could have lost that game easily. Yeah. They could have called leverage. To me, it's a garbage rule, but they did. And so they had a redo on the kick. They won the game. They beat Miami. Let's be honest. Mike McDaniel, if he survives halfway through the season, is going to be a miracle. Yeah. So, they won 2 games against 2 opponents. And Daniel Jones, to his credit, realized that Anthony Richardson, it was just, they don't have a starting quarterback. I have an opportunity to go there and start right off the bat. And so he took it. And so good for him. But his time has run its course, because if you saw him play here, that first year was great. Injuries, not the same. Happy feet. Last year, we were done with him. And we felt, and to be honest, a lot of us, when he was drafted, felt that Dave Gettleman, God help us, overreached. And he shouldn't have been taken 6th overall. And so, Daboll, though, when, at some point when stuff doesn't work, it comes on to the coach. And now when you look at what Josh Allen is doing in Buffalo, they're like, well, does he really deserve the credit? Look at Josh Allen. He's still great. Daboll can't do anything. And so Daboll is right now connected to Jackson Dart, which is why it's a predicament, because he is essentially coaching for his job. John Mara basically wants an opportunity to make the playoffs this year, and he's a fool, because if you look at the schedule, there's no way you can make the play. I shouldn't say no way, but to make the playoffs, you have to go above and beyond with an aging quarterback, or you're going to have Brian Daboll take Jackson Dart and turn him into Dan Marino, which means Daboll is coaching for his future while also trying to mentor the quarterback of the future with the GM that's also going to be on the outside. I mean, it is such a mess that, all right, what happens if they don't make the playoffs? If Jackson Dart does not take a step forward, do you fire Daboll and the GM and bring someone else in? Who knows? But right now, fan-wise, they're all done with Daboll. And I was originally a proponent of bringing him back because it's 3 years. I'm like, you know what? You might as well bring him back. But if you do that, you're going to have to give a 2-year commitment because if you draft a quarterback, there's no way you're going to turn that quarterback into something this year. It's going to be next year. But when you look at the schedule, they literally can start 1-4 or God forbid 0-8. And if you do that, the fans are going to be screaming to fire the head coach, to get rid of the GM. And if you're John Mara, what do? And if you fire him, now you're going to bring a new regime in to mentor a quarterback that they didn't draft, which is exactly what he did the last time when he fired Dave Gettleman and fired Joe Judge and brought in Daboll and Shane. And he said, we have to give this kid a chance in Daniel Jones. And he's repeating the same mistakes because that's what bad owners do.
See, this is the unfortunate part of sports for the athletes. Okay, I mean, they're making millions of dollars, so it's not the end of the world. But look at Trevor Lawrence. He was promoted as once in a generation talent, but how many different head coaches has he played for? Like, is he on number 3 or 4? Like, I don't know. I've lost count at this point.
Yeah. I mean, he's been on there for a while. I don't know. You know, I guess you never know. You know what? Let's be honest. Russell Wilson was drafted in the 3rd round after the Seahawks gave $21 million to Matt Flynn off of one game that he played for the Green Bay Packers.
I do remember that.
No one knew if you knew who Russell Wilson was, you would have drafted him in the 1st round. They take him in the 3rd round, and they started him right at the season start. So Dak Prescott, same thing. They drafted him in the 4th round. You don't know. You know, you take quarterbacks in the 1st round, you don't know. But then you have a franchise like Cleveland, which are complete imbeciles, and they trade everything away for Deshaun Watson. And they give him $250 million guaranteed. I'm glad the Giants didn't do that, at least.
What year was Russell Wilson? Was that the same year as Andrew Luck and RG3?
You know what? I don't know. I turned 50 in 2 weeks. I can't remember.
Hold on. Russell Wilson.
You're going to have to look that up.
Because I remember that had to have been 2012. Yes, that was okay. So that was the same year Andrew Luck went Andrew Luck and RG3. Went 1 and 2. I remember.
I'll go one further. Lamar Jackson was drafted in the 32nd pick of the 1st round. You had Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, and what's his name? Josh Rosen. Yeah. Who I actually liked when I watched him out of Cal. I was like, oh, this guy's not bad. Yes. I mean, come on. And then the Cardinals take Josh Rosen, and the next year they fire the coach. I think they bring in Kingsbury, and then they draft their quarterback they have now, whose name slips my mind.
Kyler Murray.
So, I mean, you never know. And even now, Kyler Murray, he's okay. He's good. I mean, he's not a franchise quarterback. They pay him like him, but he's not. So, you know, you just never know with these guys. And so we hope, New York Giant fans, we hope Jackson Dart is that guy. He started 3 years in college, you know, from Ole Miss, and you hear all these, but you don't know until they're out there. You have no idea. Daniel Jones was, you know, he was great under Shermer that first year, his rookie year, but I mean, you know, wasn't anything great after that. Daboll basically used his legs more than a thrower to get, and that first year that the Giants made the playoffs and they beat Minnesota and got drubbed by Philly, they had one of the easiest schedules in the NFL. I guess they're paying for it now with one of the hardest, but one of the easiest schedules that year, and everything lined up, you know. But you know, the Giants, like I said, they're bad teams. They do things to lose. They have bad luck, and then you get screwed with Saquon Barkley going to the Eagles, winning the Super Bowl. You know what? Maybe Daniel Jones wins the MVP and the Colts go to the AFC Conference Championship game. I would not put anything past anything at this point if you're a Giants fan.
That would be quite. The Giants watched Saquon Barkley win a Super Bowl last year, and then they're going to watch Daniel Jones win a Super Bowl this year. That's what's going to happen.
A conference championship game. But you know, listen, the Giants 2 years ago, they had an opportunity before his final year, Saquon Barkley. They had a chance to trade Saquon Barkley. They could have traded him to Buffalo and got a couple of picks for him. John Mara is like, nope, our fans love Saquon Barkley. We've got to keep Saquon Barkley for the fans. Otherwise, they will have nothing to. Wonderful. What happens? They get nothing for him. The season implodes like it was going to. He walks away, goes to Philly, win Super Bowl, and here you are. You essentially got nothing for him. You let him walk, and then he wins the Super Bowl with a rival that you have lost 16 of the last 20 games against. I mean, that's like I said, it's bad all the way across. The players have sucked, the coaches and GMs have sucked, and the owner has sucked. And that's where we are right now.
Man.
This is a great
we think we have it bad right now in Kansas City.
You have it bad. You've won how many Super Bowls?
Satesh, you should see Chiefs Twitter. You should hear the local radio stations.
I'm a Mets fan and a Giants fan. I know I have 2 Super Bowls, but these last 10 years, do you know the difference between the Giants and the Jets this last decade? The Jets are a laughing stock. The Giants are a laughing stock. We're literally, before the season began, the Jets had one more win in the last 10 years than the Giants. One more win. That's what we are. We are the Jets right now. And then the Mets are what they are. Come on, guys. You can't see. You have Super Bowl wins. You can't complain. Be happy.
I don't disagree. I'm just letting you know, like, we are like.
You want Marty Schottenheimer back there? How about Marty Schottenheimer?
I agree.
Come on.
But listen, this city is one loss away from like protests outside of Arrowhead. People are calling out Andy Reid.
If the Giants beat the Chiefs, Brian Daboll might get an extension.
That would happen. Satesh, I could talk to you forever. We got to do this again because I'd love to talk more about your background in media and also talk more about New York sports and whatnot. I know we could talk for a long time, but you're busy. You got a million things to do.
Let me say this. I don't know what the demographic of your listeners are or who takes in your show and whatnot, but if you have young people or older people looking to get into sports media or they have questions about, hey, I want to do play-by-play or want to do this, have them reach out to you and then send them my way. Because the one thing I like doing is I always mentor. I still have people reach out to me and I still give them my advice. And because I'm not kidding. I've been fired or laid off like 5 or 6 times in my life. I have lost, I've done a lot of work. I've been fired from a lot of jobs and let go from a lot of jobs and replaced by people that, because of favoritism and whatnot. But the one thing I'm always willing to do is just give my experience and advice if anyone needs it. It's like I said, 20 years. I walked away, but I always like helping out. So if anyone has any questions, reach out to Farzan and he'll send you my way.
Yeah, and listen, that's very nice of you. I know Benjamin Albright, who does a lot of sports media in Denver. You two, I remember we lost touch after a while, and then we reconnected later on Twitter. But you would always answer my questions. I greatly appreciate that. I can't thank you enough for that. Ben Albright, I remember when I was a college student at KU, he was always willing to talk to me, answer any of my questions, critique anything. So yeah, if you guys, and I have it on the screen right now, if you guys do want to reach out to Satesh, if you guys have any questions, like you said, any young guy that wants to get into media, or if you've got kids that want to get into media,
yes.
I know a little bit. Satesh knows 10 times more than I do, but SSW Fan is his X or Twitter account. So give him a follow on there. Like you said, you can reach out to me. I can connect you with Satesh as well. Satesh, it was so much fun talking to you. 18 years in the making. Brought you back here on the podcast. We'll have to do this again sometime in the off season. Enjoy the game this Sunday night, and we'll keep in touch, I'm sure.
I would wish you luck, but you guys are going to need it. Trust me. You're fine.
Satesh, thanks so much, man. Appreciate it. You take care. All right, that was Satesh Shah here on the Chiefs Zone podcast. Longtime sports talk radio guy in New York, also the former host of Baseball in New York podcast on My Sports Radio. All right, that'll do it for this edition of the Chiefs Zone podcast. My name is Farzin Vousoughian. Thank you all for joining me tonight. I will talk to you all during the Red Friday Q&A live chat, so join me for that. That is going to be Friday at 5 p.m. Central Time. Until then, I will talk to you all later. Take care.